Out of all of the things I find interesting about the unreleased Nintendo 64 version of Mother 3, I think what ranks highly for me personally is the character designs. I'm well aware that for years now that these designs have been regarded by many as pretty weird, but I love them all to bits. What I find cool too is that it seems that when designing these characters for EarthBound 64, the creative team took the likenesses of various celebrities for many characters, as well as pulling inspiration from other pieces of media, and more. So, what if I attempted to try finding and documenting all the potential design inspirations? Quick disclaimer, this video is going to contain a lot of theorizing and speculation. I can't peer into the minds of the devs for this game from back in the late 90s, as much as I'd like to. This is merely my attempt to try and contextualize what possibly could have served as inspiration, as well as go over the bits of info related we do know are confirmed. So take a lot of what's presented in this video with a grain of salt. That aside, I've decided to place the names of a bunch of relevant Mother 3 characters on a wheel to help me decide what order I should tackle everyone. Without further delay, let's begin. Okay, I swear I didn't rig this. Awfully convenient to begin with the twins, though. Being two of the most important characters in the game, there's quite a bit to say about the twins, but let's not start with these designs for them. In fact, let's just start with their names. Lucas and Klaus's names were inspired by a novel called The Notebook, as confirmed by a May 2000 interview with Shigesato Itoi by the 64 Dream. Here's what he said. Is it true there's a novel featuring characters from the series, including Lucas and Klaus? Yes, they're from a novel called The Notebook. It's about the bonds between twins. What sort of novel is it? Well, it's similar to an RPG and has an incredible presence. The author's name is Agota Christoph, and it's the first novel in a 3-part series. What's in a name, huh? But now onto actual character design, and yeah, we gotta talk about 1996 Lucas first. Joy. The thing about 1996 Lucas is that he basically looks a lot like the art director of EarthBound 64, Ashura Benimaru Ito. Mr. Ito is a pretty interesting dude who has had a lot of significance within Nintendo history that unfortunately is brought up upon not nearly enough. The man was centrally important during development of games like Pokemon Snap and Pokemon Stadium. Also, he loved leopard print. Anyways, the funny thing about him inspiring 1996 Lucas is that it seems that it was possibly accidental, as in an interview from E3 1997, Mr. Ito said this. The 1996 design for Lucas looked a lot like me, so that's why all the staff shouted at me, I don't like it, especially Shigesato Itoi in particular who shouted, no, I don't like it. So he requested I redesign the main character to something more straightforward. There, he flat out admits that this Lucas looks a lot like him, but doesn't confirm that was his specific intention with designing him. So was it a subconscious decision? A coincidence maybe? I'll leave that for you to decide. But yeah, the staff were dissatisfied with this design, particularly Mr. Itoi himself, and thus Lucas, and by extension his brother Klaus, were redesigned in 1997 and gained this design which was used up until the game's cancellation in 2000. There's actually a few things to go over with this design, so let's start at the most interesting part. That's right, his shoes! According to the June 26, 1997 issue of Weekly Famitsu, Lucas's shoes were inspired by Shigesato Itoi's sneakers from the time. We don't have an actual image of what his shoes looked like back then, but if a photo of them exists, I would be so grateful if I ever got to see that. As for the twins' faces, I believe the pre-timeskip inspiration was Macaulay Culkin of Home Alone fame. The film Home Alone was released in Japan in 1991 and was a lucrative success over there. As for post-timeskip Lucas, he seems to be based on Leonardo DiCaprio. Of course, one of DiCaprio's biggest roles was that of the Titanic film from 1997, but this couldn't have been the particular role that got him on the radar of the EB64 devs, as Lucas's post-timeskip face was actually first shown in the same month as the movie's Japanese release. It's more so possible they were inspired by DiCaprio's role in a film like The Quick and the Dead from 1995, which is a spaghetti western. Keep that term spaghetti western in mind, as it'll be relevant later. Ah yes, Boney. What's there to say about N64 Boney that hasn't been said already? A lot, probably, but let's not get too into that right now. Boney's design seems to have been inspired heavily by Slinky Dog, particularly the one found in the 1995 Pixar film, Toy Story. This may seem like a bit of an odd thing to assume where inspiration was pulled from, but as a matter of fact, the Mother 3 Toy Story connections actually span back as far as 1997. In another interview with Mystery Toe, also from E3 97, it is stated, "Another goal of the Mother 3 team is to create a truly epic 3D computer graphics game." Mystery Toe relates that he and Mr. Miyamoto once watched Disney's Toy Story together. Afterwards, they discussed the impact of the movie together. "Toy Story is an epic movie with 3D graphics," Mystery Toe said. "This movie established a style for creating feature animation using computer graphics to tell a story, but there is no standard for 3D movie games. We need to establish a different way for games." So with that in mind, Toy Story is a pretty relevant piece of media in regards to inspiring aspects of Mother 3, and I'll certainly be bringing it up several more times before the end of this video. Oh yeah, now this is one of my favorite examples of character inspiration. Bronson is very clearly and obviously based upon American actor Charles Bronson. Like, look at these two. They even share their names for God's sake. This is literally as close as you can get to being confirmed without it actually being confirmed. Amusingly, this is one of the few instances where this design inspiration actually carried over to the GBA version, as Bronson is still named Bronson in that, and indeed does still resemble Charles Bronson. Now at this point you might be wondering, why pick this actor to base a character off of? Well, I didn't explain this before when talking about Lucas and Klaus being based on Culkin and DiCaprio, but one extremely important bit of info I alluded to in the intro is that the team did indeed take inspiration from the likenesses of celebrities for many characters. As an article covering Mother 3 from 1998 states, "There are also characters that look like famous people," in reference to characters found throughout the game. Bronson, of course, happens to be one of the most obvious characters to pin down said inspiration. But yeah, keep that quote in mind too during the rest of this video because it is extremely important and relevant. So this is a bit of an odd one. The pig masks in EarthBound 64, like with the pig masks in the GBA version, all have variants of their own design, but all follow a pretty consistent motif, that being pigs. Anyway, I think a kinda obvious and yet difficult to pin down inspiration for them was the Star Wars franchise. I say obvious because, look at them, they're an imperialistic fantasy army. They'd remind anyone of stormtroopers. But I say difficult to pin down because there isn't actually a single interview about Mother 3 or anything where any of the devs mention Star Wars as an inspiration, or even as something in the heads of the developers at the time. This was until I remembered the September 2005 video game tester job posting from Brownie Brown where an enemy resembling Darth Vader is present. It's pretty obvious this post was for Mother 3, so while this is admittedly pretty loose, it does confirm Star Wars was being thought of at the time while Mother 3 was being made, even if this here is for the GBA version and not the N64 one. Besides that, I think one more possible inspiration, funnily enough, is Toy Story again, just in an extremely loose sense of Flint versus the pig masks, reflecting Woody versus Buzz. Hell, in GBA, the Masked Man has a few design similarities with Buzz Lightyear, such as the wings and a helmet. So if we got to see the N64 version of the Masked Man someday, and he resembled Buzz in some way, I'd do a backflip. That all being said, we do have info regarding a couple of the poses that we can see the pig masks doing in this image. According to the March 7th, 1997 issue of Weekly Famitsu, the pig masked lieutenant's pose in the center here is based on John Travolta. Satoru Iwata stated that red guy is posing as John Travolta. Apparently the designer downloaded that pose from the internet yesterday and went to a lot of trouble to make it so. In addition, Mystery Toy stated that the others in the image are doing Yokozuna poses, which would be this. Neat, huh? Kumur is a bit of a more interesting character to discuss here since it's actually kind of difficult to pin down what she might have been inspired by. Out of everything, I think the most likely candidate would be that of a vintage Barbie doll. Compare that lipstick, nose shape, eyeliner, and eyebrows between the two, and they're pretty similar overall. Another candidate for possible inspiration I've seen suggested is Wilma Flintstone from the Flintstones. This one I think is a lot more far-fetched. As far as we know, nothing else in the game was inspired by anything from the Flintstones. That being said, the guy on the GBA Mother 3 team who played a prototype for EarthBound 64 did claim that the game had a Flintstones feel, so who knows, I guess it's possible. It's Duster time. Firstly, I'm not going over 1996 Duster. I don't know what caused this thing to exist. Anyway, it seems Duster's later N64 design was based on... You know what? I'm actually going to wait until I get to West to explain who Duster may have been based on. You'll soon see why. This one again is kinda loose, but feels obvious at the same time. I think that the Dragos were inspired by Rex, once again from Toy Story. Something about seeing these intimidating at a glance and yet actually friendly dinos makes me feel like there's probably a connection. Now finally, possibly the most pre-existingly notable of all these potential inspirations. You may have seen posts online before pointing out N64 Wes's uncanny resemblance to Mike from Breaking Bad. Well, Wes was indeed likely based on American actor Jonathan Banks. Like, here's a photo of Banks from 1995, and here's Wes. Do I even need to point out the similarities? As for Duster, it seems that for whatever reason, he was also based on Jonathan Banks. Just that of when he was younger. Yeah, this father and son could have both had their likenesses taken from the same one guy. Anyways, I haven't been able to pin down a precise movie the EB64 devs may have looked at regarding Banks. 3 potential candidates I've seen pointed out are the 1978 film The Cheap Detective, the 1974 to 1982 TV series Little House on the Prairie, and the 1993 to 2001 TV series Walker, Texas Ranger. We finally made it to Flint, who sports probably the most popular design out of any of the EarthBound 64 characters. Flint's design is seemingly a blend of a few people and characters, those being Clint Eastwood, Chuck Norris, and Woody from Toy Story. Let's go over each of these, firstly with Clint Eastwood. Eastwood is notable for being the quintessential spaghetti western actor. I mentioned the term spaghetti western before, but I didn't really explain what it meant. So in short, spaghetti westerns refer to films in a western setting that were produced in Europe. The word spaghetti in the term derives from the fact that a lot of these European films specifically came from Italy. With that in mind, I postulate that it's probably not a coincidence that the previously mentioned actors such as Leonardo DiCaprio, Charles Bronson, Jonathan Banks, and now Clint Eastwood all were notable for their roles in spaghetti westerns, and that the developers of EarthBound 64 were serving inspiration from western settings for Mother 3. Anyway, Eastwood is famous for his work in films such as the 1964 movie A Fistful of Dollars, the 1966 film The Good, the Bad and the Ugly, and more. I'd wager that Eastwood's outfits in his film appearances are what inspired Flint's N64 outfit more than anything, such as the hat, the neckerchief, and the trench coat. Hell, Flint's name is even a play on Eastwood's first name, Clint. Chuck Norris notably appeared in things such as the TV series I mentioned earlier, Walker, Texas Ranger, as well as films like Lone Wolf McQuade. I don't necessarily think he may have served as big of a basis for Flint as Clint Eastwood did, but Norris is certainly notable enough to be mentioned in this. As for Woody, well, I feel like the inspiration here is pretty blatant. Amusingly though, Flint's GBA design's outfit is far closer to Woody's than his N64 one. Funny how that worked out. Hinawa doesn't actually have a lot I or anyone else have been able to narrow down in terms of who she was potentially inspired by. Except, of course, Bo Peep from Toy Story. Sick of hearing that movie's name yet? Well, Bo Peep's hair and overall facial structure is fairly reminiscent of Hinawa's, and seeing as there's so many other characters in this that took inspiration from Toy Story, they probably did so here as well. Probably not a coincidence that Bo Peep has sheep and Flint's family does too, huh? Alright, I'm gonna be real. I have no clue what Salsa was inspired by. He's a purple monkey. How many pieces of media do you know that have purple monkeys? In all seriousness though, I'm really unsure as to what could have inspired Salsa's design. If you guys have any suggestions, I'd appreciate some discussion in the comments. And no, Bonzi Buddy came after N64 Salsa. Wait, I don't need to spin the wheel again, do I? What the hell. Mr. Yodere. Being real, we really know next to nothing about these characters other than that they were created by EarthBound 64 enemy designer Toshino Aoki and were nowhere to be seen in the GBA version of Mother 3. That said, it's possible they were based on or inspired by the Ewoks from the 1983 film Star Wars Episode 4 Return of the Jedi. I mean, we've already established the Star Wars inspirations amongst Mother 3's dev team, so I don't know. I guess this is possible. Admittedly though, this is the one entry from this video I'm most iffy about. I feel like we just don't know enough about Mr. Yodere to be sure, but I still wanted to put this possibility out there. Well, that should be that, but I actually forgot someone on the wheel before. That being Ionia, so oops, sorry. Ionia is a super interesting case. In short, it looks like they were also designed with Benimaru Ito's likeness, but unlike Lucas, they didn't receive a redesign to not look so much like Ito. This, I think, was an oddly fitting choice for Ionia. Really provides them with that non-binary look that suits their characterization. And that was some of the possible design inspirations for EarthBound 64. Hopefully as more gets uncovered about this game, such as more translations of magazine coverage, or even something crazy like a Mother Series concept art book hopefully happening someday, we may be able to pin down more about what could have inspired how the visuals for this game were crafted. Maybe if that new Mother 2 art exhibit does well, they might do another one down the road but for Mother 3 instead. But until then, did you feel like I missed any potential celebrities or pieces of media you feel were possibly drawn from for inspiration for EarthBound 64? Or do you think I'm crazy for making a bunch of stretches? Either way, consider leaving a comment with your thoughts. If anything, I hope this video helped in getting some of you to appreciate these designs for the Mother 3 characters. The more time that passes, the more I find myself appreciating the character designs we can observe from N64 Mother 3, and considering that these designs remain largely unpopular in the Mother fandom, putting in some time to analyze and talk about these designs is something I'm happy to do. Until next time.